The clink of silverware against porcelain plates filled the dining room of the modest suburban Portland home. Tara Morgan sat quietly, her posture straight but tense like a violin string pulled too tight. She was 31, with chestnut hair pulled back in a practical ponytail that emphasized her sharp cheekbones and observant eyes. Her sister Vanessa lounged across from her, 28 and effortlessly beautiful, in that way that had always come naturally to her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders, her fingernails perfectly manicured. Their parents, William and Catherine Morgan, sat at opposite ends of the rectangular oak table that had been in their family for 3 generations. William, still handsome at 62, with salt and pepper hair, maintained the commanding presence of the engineer he once was, despite the fact that his consulting gigs had grown increasingly sporadic. Catherine, her once vibrant face now lined with the fatigue of chronic illness, placed another helping of mashed potatoes on Vanessa's plate, though her younger daughter hadn't asked for seconds. The family dinner, a tradition Catherine insisted on maintaining despite her health issues, had proceeded as usual. Catherine spoke about her doctor's appointments. William complained about potential clients who wouldn't commit. Vanessa shared gossip about people Tara had never met, and Tara nodded, added appropriate comments when necessary, and tried to ignore the familiar weight pressing against her chest as she calculated the bills waiting for her at home. Vanessa swirled the wine in her glass, the warm dining room light catching her eyes and making them glimmer with something Tara recognized all too well, that mischievous, slightly cruel look that had been directed at her since childhood. "So, sis," Vanessa drawled, feigning a gentle kind of concern that fooled no one. She tilted her head, her mouth curling into that familiar half-smile. "Where's your husband? Where are your kids?" She paused for dramatic effect. "Oh, right. You don't have any?" She let out a soft laugh, then casually sipped her wine as if she had just commented on the weather, rather than delivered a precisely aimed barb. Catherine immediately joined in with a light laugh of her own, loud enough for Tara to hear the judgment tucked beneath it. William gave a quiet snort, his eyes glinting with amusement as he continued cutting his roast beef. Tara sat frozen, her spoon hovering midair, her face carefully composed into a neutral mask she had perfected over the years. But something inside her fractured. Not an explosion of rage, but a dense, icy silence, like glass splintering into tiny fractures bound to shatter at any moment. In that brief moment, memories crashed over her like a storm. All the time she had set aside her own needs to clean up her family's crises. The winter night her mother was rushed to the hospital with chest pains. How Tara missed the most important client presentation of her career, just to sign insurance papers and put down the surgical deposit. The time her father fell behind on the mortgage, and she emptied the savings she had set aside for her dream condo, even though she herself was crammed into a tiny rental, with rent climbing higher every year. How Vanessa called her sobbing after being evicted from her downtown apartment, and Tara paid off all her debts and found her a new place to live, every time she had done it silently, without complaint, telling herself it was the duty of a daughter, the responsibility of an older sister. And now, what was she given in return? A mocking remark laid bare before the whole family, turning her life choices into the punchline of their joke. Tara took a deep breath, set her spoon down on her plate with deliberate care, and lifted her gaze directly at Vanessa. Her sister was still sitting there, smug, her eyes gleaming with the confidence of someone who believed she had just won. Slowly Tara spoke, her voice so calm it surprised even her. "I may not have a husband or children, but where's your money?" She paused, mirroring Vanessa's earlier delivery. "Oh, right. I'm still the one supporting you. Until today." The room fell silent, as though someone had flipped a switch and cut the sound. Vanessa's smile froze her eyes, flashing with confusion, before quickly hardening into anger. Catherine set her fork down, the clatter of metal against porcelain, slicing through the tense air. William narrowed his eyes, leaning forward as if unsure he had heard correctly. Tara felt every pair of eyes fixed on her, but instead of lowering her head as she always had, she held their gaze steady and unflinching. In that moment, everything changed. The drive back to Portland felt surreal. Tara gripped the steering wheel of her practical sedan, the same car she had purchased 5 years ago, and maintained meticulously, rather than upgrading to something newer. Rain pelted the windshield, matching the storm brewing inside her. She had left the family dinner without another word, gathering her coat and walking out as her family sat in stunned silence. Every morning of Tara's life began like the ringing of a repetitive alarm clock. Waking up in her small apartment in Portland, drinking black coffee with no sugar, then rushing to catch the morning bus to the tech company where she worked as a product manager. Her apartment was modest, just enough space for a single woman to call home. The rent consumed a third of her monthly income, but that wasn't why she lived so frugally. The real reason was simpler. Most of her paycheck never stayed long in her account. It quickly flowed toward her family, a black hole she had become so familiar with that she no longer questioned it. Her mother, Catherine, a retired nurse, after early heart surgery still needed medications, checkups, and the constant costs that came with them. And Tara was always the one who paid. Her father, William, once worked steadily as an engineer, but contracts came and went, and during the lean months, Tara was the daughter wiring money to keep the suburban Portland house from foreclosure. And then there was Vanessa, beautiful, adored by the family, and also the one Tara had rescued countless times when she dropped out of school, fell behind on rent, or recklessly maxed out her credit cards. Tara never thought of herself as carrying the weight, but looking back, every scramble and transfer formed a silent resume clearly stating her role in the family, the safety net, the backup plan, the reliable one who would always sacrifice her needs for theirs. The next morning, Tara sat at a downtown Portland cafe with her best friend Mia Lewis. At 32, Mia was also single, also in tech, but lived a completely different life. Her apartment had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She took international vacations every year. She had a retirement account with actual money in it. "You look terrible," Mia said bluntly, pushing a second latte toward Tara. "What happened?" Tara sighed, rubbing her temples. "Family dinner." Mia made a face. "Ah, the monthly emotional bloodletting. What was it this time?" "Vanessa made a crack about me being single and childless. Everyone laughed. And you said—" Tara looked up, a faint smile touching her lips. "I asked where her money was since I'm still supporting her. Then I said, until today." Mia's eyes widened and she let out a delighted laugh. "You did not— Holy shit, Tara. What did they say, son? Nothing. I left." "About time," Mia said firmly, reaching across the table to squeeze Tara's hand. "Look, I've been saying this for years. You can't keep setting yourself on fire to keep them warm." "I know." "Do you?" Mia challenged gently. "Tara, listen to me. Summer is coming. I'm going to Italy for 2 weeks in July. Come with me. You haven't taken a vacation in, 3 years?" Tara felt the familiar tightness in her chest. "I can't afford, bullshit," Mia interrupted. "You make almost as much as I do. The only difference is that I spend my money on me and you spend yours on them. You always have a reason, Tara. What's really going on?" The question hung in the air between them, and Tara looked away, unable to meet her friend's concerned gaze. What was really going on? How could she explain that for 7 years she had been the invisible support beam keeping her family's house of cards from collapsing? That every time she thought about spending on herself, a voice in her head whispered that her mother might not get her medication, or her father might lose the house, or Vanessa might end up homeless. 7 years ago, Vanessa decided to quit her university in Eugene after only a year and a half. She called Tara one rainy afternoon, her voice trembling, saying she no longer had money for tuition or housing, that she had missed the payment deadline and the school was holding her records. Tara remembered sitting in her small Portland apartment, staring at her bank account balance as her chest tightened. That money was what she had saved for 2 years, hoping to buy her very first car. Instead, she wired nearly $15,000 to Vanessa's school to cover her debts, and even added a few hundred more for living expenses. When her mother asked, Tara simply said, "I've got it covered," and hung up her heart, aching yet hopeful that Vanessa would finally value the sacrifice. But just a few months later, Vanessa dropped out, entirely moved back home, and the money Tara had poured out was gone without a trace or a thank you. Another time, one summer, Tara had planned a week-long vacation in Alaska. She had booked plane tickets, found a cozy cabin near Denali National Park, and even purchased new hiking boots specifically for the trip. It was supposed to be the first real vacation she had taken for herself in years. But only 3 days before departure, her mother called in desperation. The roof was leaking badly, repairs costing nearly $4,000. Tara looked at her suitcase, already packed the confirmation emails for flights and lodging, and slowly deleted it all. The plane tickets carried cancellation fees, the cabin rental was non-refundable. She wired her mother the money, then returned to the office as if she had never planned to go anywhere. When coworkers asked why she wasn't taking her trip, she forced a thin smile. Change of plans. Inside, her craving to breathe in Alaska's fresh air was crushed, replaced with a dull emptiness that lingered for months. But the memory that stung the most was tied to the family home. The Portland house she once thought was a symbol of safety. William had landed a big engineering contract, but within months, the client pulled out and the deal collapsed. The bank sent mortgage warnings threatening foreclosure. Tara remembered that night. Her mother sat crying in the kitchen, her father silent, saying nothing, while Vanessa shut herself away in her room. Tara quietly opened her laptop, logged into her savings account, where she had funneled every bonus, every extra hour of overtime. She wired over $18,000 to her father to cover the mortgage, saving the house from the bank's grasp. No one asked if she had enough left to live on. No one offered to repay her. They simply sighed in relief and slipped back into their routines, as if her sacrifice was nothing more than expected. When she added it all up, she had spent over $90,000 over the course of 8 years. That money could have been the seed capital for her dream business, the down payment on a condo in Portland, or at the very least the trips that would have allowed her to truly live out her youth. Instead, she sent it away without hesitation, lulling herself with the thought that it was her duty. And that very obedience had turned her into an endless supply line, leading to the moment at the dinner table, listening to her sister's mockery and her parents' laughter echoing in agreement. "Tara," Mia's voice pulled her back to the present. "Where did you go just now?" "Just thinking about all the money," Tara admitted quietly. "Over $90,000, Mia. That's what I've given them." Mia's eyes widened. "Jesus Christ. I could have owned a home by now." "Yes, you could have." Mia's voice was gentle but firm. "And it's not too late to start. What are you going to do?" Tara took a deep breath. "I don't know yet, but something has to change." What Tara didn't tell Mia was about Jason. The wound was still too fresh, even though it had been almost 2 years. Jason Bennett was a medical resident she met at a friend's party when she was 29. Tall, with kind brown eyes and a quiet confidence that drew her in immediately. For the first time in years, Tara had felt seen, truly seen, by someone who valued her for exactly who she was. Their relationship bloomed quickly. Weekends spent hiking in the Columbia River Gorge, nights cooking together in his small apartment, conversations that flowed effortlessly until dawn. Jason talked about the future openly, about the home they would buy together once he finished his residency, about the children he hoped they would have. On their 1-year anniversary, he took her to dinner at Portland's most elegant restaurant. The candlelight reflected in his eyes as he reached across the table for her hand. "I love you, Tara. I want to build a life with you." Her heart soared, but in that exact moment, her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. Catherine needed $4,000 immediately for medical bills. The hospital was threatening collections. Tara stared at the screen, watching as the beautiful moment crumbled before her eyes. That night, as they walked along the Willamette River, the city lights reflected in the water Jason proposed. He dropped to one knee, opened a small velvet box, and looked up at her with such hope it nearly broke her. "Will you marry me, Tara?" She stood, frozen, tears streaming down her face. Not tears of joy, but of impossible choice. "I can't," she whispered, the words tearing from her throat. "I can't commit to you when my family still needs so much from me. It wouldn't be fair to you." Jason tried to understand. He suggested solutions, compromises. But Tara knew the truth. The late-night calls for money would never stop. The emergencies would keep coming. And eventually his love would turn to resentment as their own dreams were perpetually put on hold for her family's crises. So she let him go, choosing her family's needs over her own happiness. 6 months later, she saw on social media that he was dating someone new. A year after that, they were engaged. Now he was building the life he had once imagined with Tara, but with someone else, someone who was free to say yes. After her coffee with Mia, Tara returned to her apartment and sat in the growing darkness. She opened her laptop, the screen illuminating her face in the dim room, and logged into her bank account. The number that appeared shocked her, even though she already knew it would be low. After paying her rent utilities and sending money to her parents for their mortgage, she had barely $1,200 left. Her last paycheck had been over $8,000. She scrolled through her transaction history, each transfer to her family appearing like accusations. $750 for her mother's medications. $2,000 for her father when his car broke down. $1,500 to Vanessa to cover her credit card debt when she was threatened with collections. On and on it went, dozens of withdrawals strung together month after month, year after year. She clicked to view annual summaries. Each year she had sent at least $10,000 to $12,000 to her family. Over 8 years, the total was more than $92,000. Enough to put a substantial down payment on a condo in Portland's desirable neighborhoods. Enough to start the small tech consulting business she had once dreamed of. Enough to travel the world and still have savings left over. Instead, it had all dissolved into emergencies that would never be repaid, into a lifestyle her family maintained at her expense, into the comfort they took for granted, while she denied herself even small luxuries. Pain seeped through her body, a suffocating bitterness pressing against her chest. She had sacrificed not only money, but also her youth, her love, and her career advancement, all to serve as the plan B for a family that consumed those sacrifices as if they were owed, as if her purpose in life was to be their safety net. Anger surged, but with it came a cold clarity. She could not go on like this anymore. She was not a bank, not an eternal lifeline. She was a human being, and she deserved to live for herself. That night she opened the transfer app, the one she had used for years to send money to her parents, and slowly pressed the button that said, "Cancel recurring transfer." Such a small action, taking only seconds. Yet it felt as though she had shattered chains that had bound her for 8 long years. She sat in silence, watching the screen go dark, and exhaled a long breath. Her heart carried worry, even fear of what would come next, but alongside it flickered the faint light of freedom, just beginning to glow. 2 days later, the first message arrived. Her mother wrote, "Tara, the mortgage is due soon. Have you sent the money yet?" She read it but didn't reply. Hours later, her father called and left a voicemail. "Tara, what are you doing? This house needs you. Don't let us suffer." His voice was deep and sharp, echoing with the authority that had intimidated her since childhood. And for the first time in her life, she pressed delete without saving it. Vanessa texted too, her tone half scolding, half mocking. "What's wrong with you this time? Stop being dramatic. Mom and Dad are worried. Just send the money. You've got it, don't you?" Tara stared at the screen, her heart gone cold, then quietly turned off her phone. In the days that followed, the messages poured in like a storm. Her mother wrote, "Don't let this small matter tear the family apart." Her father wrote, "You're being selfish. This whole family has always relied on you. You have a responsibility." Vanessa shifted tactics, moving from scolding to pleading. "I really need you, Tara. If you don't help, I'll be evicted. How could you let that happen to your own sister?" Tara read them all, but she didn't reply. With every silence, she felt another layer of armor forming around her heart, her resolve growing stronger. On Friday night, she came home to her apartment, sat at her desk, and opened an empty notebook. On the first page, she wrote in bold letters, "No longer Plan B." Beneath it, she listed everything she needed to do for herself: save to buy her own home, spend time with real friends, take care of her health, enroll in the online MBA program she had postponed twice for family emergencies. Each line was like a brick laid down to build the foundation of a new life. When she closed the notebook, she heard her heartbeat slow and steady. Her parents might grow furious, Vanessa might hate her, and she might lose the false peace she had clung to for years. But she knew that if she didn't stop now, she would lose herself forever. And she was no longer willing to pay that price for such ingratitude. What Tara didn't understand was the complex web of emotions her family felt toward her. Their perspective was vastly different from her own, colored by years of entitlement, and the roles they had assigned to each family member. In Catherine's mind, Tara's financial support wasn't extraordinary. It was simply what a good daughter should do. She had raised Tara, nursed her through childhood illnesses, helped her with homework. In her view, Tara owed the family for those years of care. Her early heart condition had forced her to retire from nursing, creating a narrative in which she was the vulnerable one who needed protection. She didn't see how she had transferred that vulnerability into a weapon of guilt. William viewed Tara's success with a mixture of pride and resentment. On one hand, he was proud that his eldest daughter had secured a stable, well-paying job. On the other, her success highlighted his own failures, the engineering career that had slowly unraveled through a series of poor decisions and economic downturns. When Tara paid the mortgage, it wasn't just financial assistance. It was a reminder that he had failed in his role as provider. This created a toxic cycle. He needed her money, but resented her for having it. And Vanessa, only 3 years younger than Tara, but worlds apart in responsibility, had grown up watching her older sister sacrifice. But rather than inspiring gratitude, it created a strange expectation. In Vanessa's mind, Tara was the responsible one, the one who fixed problems while she was the free spirit, the creative one who shouldn't be constrained by mundane concerns like bills. She simultaneously envied Tara's independence and scorned her for not having the traditional markers of success that their parents valued: marriage and children. None of them recognized the weight they had placed on Tara's shoulders, or how it had slowly crushed her dreams. They saw only what they received, not what she lost in the giving. A week after she stopped sending money, Tara's phone rang constantly. Her mother sent sweet messages, her father left voicemails heavy as hammers, and Vanessa switched her tone back and forth, sometimes scolding, sometimes begging. Tara read them, listened to them, but never responded. Then, at the end of the week, her mother sent one short text: "Come home for dinner this Sunday, the family needs to talk." It wasn't an invitation. It was an order. Tara sat on her sofa staring at the words glowing on her screen, her chest tightening. Part of her wanted to refuse, to never return to the place that had drained her. But another part urged her to go, to face it once and for all, rather than let the cycle drag on any longer. She called Mia that evening. "They want me to come to dinner on Sunday," she said, pacing her small living room. "Mom says the family needs to talk." "Are you going?" Tara stopped by the window, looking out at the Portland skyline. "I think I have to finish this properly." "You don't owe them an explanation," Mia said firmly. "You don't owe them anything." "I know," Tara replied, "but I owe it to myself to end this clearly. No more hiding, no more silent resentment. I need to say what I need to say." Mia was quiet for a moment. "Okay, but call me right after. Promise." "I promise." That Sunday evening, Tara drove back to the family home, her heart pounding against her ribs. The moment she stepped through the weathered wooden door, she could feel the heaviness in the air. The table was set with roast chicken and mashed potatoes, but the once comforting aroma now felt sharp and suffocating. Her mother was arranging the silverware, her movements harsher than usual, as if even the plates had to carry her irritation. Her father sat at the head of the table, arms crossed, his face cold as stone. Vanessa leaned back in her chair with her arms folded, eyes glued to her phone, pretending indifference, though the curve of her lips carried a smug challenge. Tara pulled out a chair and sat down. No one spoke for several minutes, only the faint clinking of utensils breaking the silence. Then her mother's voice cut through, directed not at Tara, but at the food on her plate. "Tara, this family cannot function without your contribution. You make good money. Helping is only natural. Your father and I sacrificed for you all these years. Now it's your turn to give back. What's wrong with that?" Tara drew in a deep breath. If it had been her a year ago, she might have bitten her tongue, stayed quiet, and later slipped money into their account in secret. But now, after everything that had built up, she was no longer afraid. She looked straight at her mother, and each word she spoke dropped heavy like stone. "That's not helping. That's exploitation." The room froze. Vanessa let out a short, mocking laugh, lifting her eyes from her phone, her gaze sharp with scorn. Oh, please don't act so righteous. You've got money, but you're still single. I don't understand why you act so high and mighty. If I were you, I'd be embarrassed that no one even wants to marry me. A rush of heat rose in Tara's chest, but she kept her voice steady, calm, without a tremor. The difference is that I work for my money while you only know how to spend it. Without me, you would have lost your place to live a long time ago. Her mother quickly interjected, her tone urgent. Tara, don't speak to your sister that way. She's still young. She hasn't found her footing like you have. You're the older sister. You have to be more forgiving. Tara turned, her eyes locked on Vanessa, but her words were meant for the entire table. Forgiving doesn't mean letting people trample all over me. I'm not a bank. I'm not a bottomless wallet. All these years I've stayed silent. I've given, and for what? To be mocked as a failure just because I'm not married. Vanessa's face flushed red, her mouth opening as if to fire back. But before she could speak, her father slammed his hand against the table. The sharp crack made the silverware tremble. His glare bore into Tara, his voice a low growl. Watch your mouth. This is your home. You should know your place. You think you're so great. You only have money because your parents raised you. Don't forget where you came from. Tara pushed back her chair, the scrape of wood against the floor piercing the silence. Her whole body trembled, but her voice was clear and resolute. If that's the case, then maybe I don't belong in this house. I've kept it standing, but all I've received in return is contempt. If you see me only as a wallet, then I'm sorry. I won't be here to be exploited any longer. The room fell into silence. Her mother's mouth hung open, her eyes brimming with tears, as though she couldn't believe the once obedient daughter dared to push back. Vanessa stared at her, her lips parting and closing again, unable to find words. Her father's face was flushed with rage, but in his eyes, Tara caught a fleeting flicker, a shift that revealed even he knew she was no longer the same Tara. She was no longer their safety net, no longer their backup plan, no longer the daughter who would sacrifice everything just to keep peace. She walked away from the table, grabbed her coat, and didn't look back. Each step felt like release, like tearing through an invisible chain that had bound her for 8 years. As the door closed behind her, she heard her mother's voice calling after her, "Tara, come back. We're family." But she didn't stop. For the first time, she let that call fade behind her softer and softer, until all that remained was the pounding of her heart, the rhythm of a freedom just beginning to take shape. Tara drove through the Portland rain windshield wipers, beating a steady rhythm that matched her heartbeat. Streetlights reflected off the wet pavement, creating pools of gold that her tires silently cut through. She hadn't cried at the dinner table. She hadn't cried walking to her car. But now, alone on the highway, tears streamed down her face, mixing with the raindrops on the windshield. 8 years. For 8 years, she had been the family's safety net, their emergency fund, their backup plan. For 8 years, she had denied herself the life she wanted to maintain theirs. And tonight, for the first time, she had broken that pattern. When she reached her apartment, she didn't turn on the lights. She sat in the darkness, listening to the rain against the windows, feeling both lighter and heavier than she had in years. Lighter because she had finally spoken her truth. Heavier because she knew the storm had only just begun. The next morning, Tara awakened with a strange sense of clarity. She opened her notebook again, the words "no longer Plan B" staring back at her in bold letters. Beneath it, she began to map out what rebuilding her life would look like. It wasn't just about keeping her money. It was about reclaiming her time, her energy, her dreams. First on the list, financial boundaries. She made a separate bank account at a different bank, one her family had no knowledge of. She transferred most of her remaining funds there, leaving just enough in her old account to cover her bills. Then she froze her credit reports with all 3 major bureaus, protecting herself from anyone who might try to open accounts in her name. Next, she turned to her apartment. For years, it had been little more than a place to sleep between work and family crises. Now she looked at it with fresh eyes. The furniture was mismatched, mostly secondhand pieces she'd acquired when she first moved to Portland. The walls were bare. She had never bothered to decorate because every extra dollar went to her family. That Saturday, she went to a local art fair in the Pearl District. She walked slowly among the booths, allowing herself to truly see the paintings and photographs for the first time. She stopped before a watercolor of Mount Hood at sunrise, the mountain bathed in soft pinks and golds. The artist, a woman with silver-streaked hair, noticed her lingering. "It reminds me of hope," the woman said quietly, "the way the light breaks over the darkness." Tara nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She purchased the painting without even asking the price, something she had never done before. When she hung it on her living room wall that evening, it felt like a declaration. This space was hers. This life was hers. On Monday, she returned to work with a new sense of purpose. As a product manager for a growing tech company, Tara had always been competent and reliable. But she had also played it safe, turning down opportunities that might have advanced her career, but would have required more of her time and energy resources she couldn't spare, while managing her family's ongoing crises. She scheduled a meeting with Jennifer Hayes, her director, a sharp-minded woman in her 40s, who had always seemed to see more potential in Tara than Tara saw in herself. "I want to lead the new mobile platform project," Tara said without preamble when they sat down in Jennifer's office. Jennifer leaned back in her chair, a faint smile playing on her lips. "That's a major undertaking. It would mean longer hours, more responsibility. You've turned down similar opportunities before." "My circumstances have changed," Tara replied steadily. "I'm ready for this challenge." Jennifer studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "It's yours, but I expect your full commitment. You'll have it." As she left the office, Tara felt something unfamiliar in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it as pride, unmixed with guilt or anxiety about how this decision would affect her family. For once, she had made a choice solely for herself and her future. That evening, she registered for the online MBA program. She had deferred twice before, once when her father needed money for car repairs, and once when Vanessa was facing eviction. She could take classes at night and on weekends while continuing to work. It would be challenging, but it was an investment in herself, one that would open new doors in her career. She also signed up for a Saturday morning yoga class at a studio near her apartment. It was a small step toward taking care of her physical and mental health, something she had neglected for too long. The first session left her muscles aching, but her mind clearer than it had been in months. 2 weeks passed. Tara's phone continued to buzz with messages from her family, but they had shifted from bewildered to angry, from pleading to threatening. Her father left voicemails that made her stomach knot with their cold fury. Her mother sent texts designed to trigger maximum guilt. Vanessa alternated between scathing accusations and tearful pleas. Tara read them all, but responded to none. Each message only reinforced her resolve. This was the pattern she was breaking, the cycle of emotional manipulation that had kept her tethered to their needs for 8 long years. At work, she threw herself into the mobile platform project, staying late to sketch out wireframes and coordinate with the development team. Her colleagues noticed the change in her, the new energy and focus she brought to meetings. What they didn't see were the nights she sat alone at her desk, learning to be comfortable with her own company, teaching herself that she was enough on her own. In the lunchroom one afternoon, she met Ben Chen, a software engineer, who had recently transferred from the company's Seattle office. At 33, he had an easy confidence and a dry wit that made her laugh for the first time in weeks. They began eating lunch together, finding common ground in their love of hiking and old science fiction movies. "My parents wanted me to be a doctor," Ben told her one day as they sat in a cafe across from the office. "When I chose computer science instead, they didn't speak to me for 6 months." Tara looked up from her salad, surprised. "How did you handle that?" Ben shrugged his eyes, thoughtful. "I loved them, but I had to live my own life. Eventually, they came around. They had to accept that I wasn't an extension of them, but my own person with my own path." He paused, studying her face. "Family can be complicated, especially when they have expectations that don't align with what you want for yourself." Tara felt a wave of recognition. "Yes," she said softly. "That's exactly it." "Want to talk about it?" Ben asked, no pressure in his voice, just a genuine offer of a listening ear. For the first time, Tara found herself telling someone other than Mia the full story of her family, the years of financial support, the guilt, the broken dreams, and finally her decision to break free. Ben listened without interrupting, his dark eyes steady on hers. When she finished, he nodded slowly. You know what I've learned? Loving someone doesn't mean letting them use you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set boundaries. My family doesn't see it that way, Tara said with a bitter laugh. To them, boundaries are just selfishness. That's because boundaries threaten the system they've created, Ben replied. A system where your role is to give and their role is to take. Of course they're going to fight when you try to change that. His words resonated with something deep inside Tara, a truth she had always sensed but never fully articulated. How do you know all this? Ben's smile held a hint of old pain. Let's just say I've been on a similar journey with my own family. Asian parents have their own special brand of guilt and obligation. As they walked back to the office, Tara felt a connection with Ben that went beyond casual friendship. He understood what she was going through in a way few others could. For the first time since Jason, she found herself wondering what it might be like to let someone new into her life, someone who respected her boundaries and supported her growth. 3 weeks after the fateful family dinner, Tara's phone lit up with a text from her mother. Unlike the previous messages filled with guilt and recrimination, this one was brief and direct. Sunday dinner at 5, we need to talk as a family. Tara stared at the message, her heart racing. Part of her wanted to ignore it to continue her policy of silence, but another part, the stronger part, knew that true independence meant facing her family directly, not avoiding them. She called Mia that evening as she paced her apartment. They want me to come to another family dinner, she said, her voice tight. Mom says we need to talk. Are you going? Mia asked, concern evident in her voice. Tara stopped by the window looking out at the city lights. I think I have to. I need to make it clear in person that this isn't a temporary rebellion. This is my life now. Be careful, Mia warned. They've had years to perfect their manipulation tactics. I know, Tara said quietly, but I'm stronger now. After she hung up, she texted her mother a single word. Okay. Sunday arrived with gloomy skies and intermittent rain, matching Tara's mood as she drove to her parents' home. This time she felt different approaching the house. She wasn't the dutiful daughter arriving with checkbook in hand. She was a woman standing in her own power, ready to defend the boundaries she had established. When she walked through the door, the atmosphere hit her immediately. Heavy, charged with tension, like the air before a thunderstorm. Her mother moved around the kitchen with quick, jerky motions, slamming cabinet doors and rattling silverware. Her father sat in his armchair, newspaper open, but unread in his lap. Vanessa lounged on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her posture deliberately casual, though her knuckles were white around the device. Dinner was a silent affair at first. Tara ate mechanically, waiting for someone to speak to launch the confrontation she knew was coming. Finally, her mother set down her fork with a sharp clink against the plate. This family cannot function without your contribution, Tara, she said, her voice strained. You make good money. Helping your family is only natural. Your father and I sacrificed for you all these years. Now it's your turn to give back. What's wrong with that? Tara took a deep breath, steadying herself. There's a difference between helping and being exploited, she said calmly. I've given over $90,000 to this family in 8 years. That's not help. That's being used as an ATM. Her mother's face flushed. We raised you. We put food in your mouth, clothes on your back. And I'm grateful for that, Tara replied, keeping her voice level despite the emotions churning inside her. But parents are supposed to provide for their children. That's what being a parent means. It doesn't create a lifelong debt that I have to repay by sacrificing my own future. Vanessa snorted, looking up from her phone. Oh, please don't act so high and mighty. You've got money, but what else do you have? No husband, no kids. If I were you, I'd be embarrassed. Heat rushed to Tara's face, but she maintained her composure. The difference is that I work for my money, Vanessa, while you only know how to spend it. Without me, you would have been evicted years ago. Her mother interjected quickly. Tara, don't speak to your sister that way. She's still young. She hasn't found her way yet. You're the older sister. You should be more understanding. Being understanding doesn't mean being a doormat. Tara countered, her gaze sweeping the table. I'm not a bank. I'm not a bottomless wallet. I've stayed silent all these years while giving and giving. And what do I get in return? Mockery for being single, as if my value as a person is tied to having a husband. Before Vanessa could respond, their father slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes jump. His face was dark with anger, his voice a low growl that cut through the tension. Watch your mouth, young lady. This is your home. You should know your place. You think you're so great because you have a fancy job. You only have that job because we raised you, educated you. Don't forget where you came from. Tara pushed back her chair, the legs scraping harshly against the floor. She stood, her whole body tense, but her voice clear and resolute. If that's how you see it, then maybe I don't belong in this house anymore. I've kept this place standing with my money for years, but all I've received in return is contempt. If all I am to you is a wallet, then I'm done. I won't be exploited any longer. The room fell silent. Her mother's mouth hung open, tears welling in her eyes. Vanessa stared, her usual smirk replaced by something close to fear. Her father's face was flushed with rage, but in his eyes, Tara caught a flicker of something else, a recognition that the dynamic had irrevocably shifted. She walked away from the table, grabbed her coat, and headed for the door. As she reached for the handle, her mother called after her, voice breaking, "Tara, please, we're family." She paused, hand on the doorknob, and looked back one last time. Family doesn't treat each other the way you've treated me. Then she was outside the door, closing behind her, rain falling gently on her face as she walked to her car. Each step felt like breaking through an invisible chain that had held her for 8 long years. As she drove away, the house growing smaller in her rearview mirror, she felt both grief and relief washing through her, in equal measure. What Tara didn't know, what she couldn't see, was the scene unfolding inside the house after she left. Her mother collapsed into a chair, face in her hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. Vanessa stood frozen, the reality of their situation finally beginning to penetrate her carefully constructed indifference. And her father, the proud, stubborn man who had always expected the world to bend to his will, sat rigid, the truth of his daughter's words landing like body blows he couldn't deflect. "What are we going to do?" Catherine finally whispered, looking up at her husband with red-rimmed eyes. "The mortgage is due next week. We can't make it without her." William's jaw tightened. "She'll come back," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "She has to." But Vanessa, surprisingly, was the one to shake her head. "No," she said quietly, a new understanding dawning in her eyes. "I don't think she will. Not this time." The week that followed Tara's second confrontation with her family was strangely peaceful. The constant barrage of texts and calls slowed to a trickle, as if they too were processing the finality of her decision. She focused on her work, throwing herself into the mobile platform project with renewed energy. She attended her MBA orientation online, feeling a thrill of excitement as she browsed the course catalog. And she continued her Saturday yoga classes, finding that the physical discipline helped quiet the lingering guilt that sometimes surfaced in quiet moments. On Friday afternoon, as she was preparing to leave the office, her phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number with a Portland area code. Thinking it might be related to her MBA program, she answered. "Is this Tara Morgan?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, speaking." "Ms. Morgan, this is Melissa Patel from Pacific Northwest Credit Union. I'm calling regarding a home equity line of credit application that was submitted with your name on it." Tara froze, her blood turning cold. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "A home equity line of credit for $65,000 on the property at 1842 Cedar Avenue. The application has your name as co-signer, along with William Morgan." The room seemed to tilt around her. Tara gripped the edge of her desk, trying to steady herself. "I never applied for any line of credit," she said, her voice sounding distant to her own ears. "I don't even own that property. It belongs to my parents." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I see," the woman said, her tone shifting. "Ms. Morgan, are you saying you did not authorize this application or sign these documents?" "Absolutely not," Tara replied, her shock giving way to a cold fury. "This is the first I'm hearing of it." In that case, I would recommend you come into our branch as soon as possible. We need to file a fraud report. Someone has used your personal information to apply for this loan. After hanging up, Tara sat motionless at her desk, trying to process what she had just learned. Her family hadn't just been using her for money all these years. When she finally cut them off, they had crossed the line into identity theft, using her name and good credit to try to secure a loan she would have been legally obligated to pay. The betrayal cut deeper than anything that had come before. This wasn't just emotional manipulation. It was a crime that could have devastated her financial future, ruined her credit, and tied her to their debts for years to come. She drove home in a daze, rain pelting her windshield, mirroring the storm inside her. When she reached her apartment, she sat in her parked car for a long time, unable to move, unable to fully comprehend that her own family would go this far. Finally, she pulled out her phone and called Mia. "They tried to take out a loan in my name," she said without preamble when her friend answered. $65,000. What? Mia's voice rose in shock. "Tell me you're joking." "The credit union just called me. They wanted me to verify that I had applied for a home equity line of credit with my father." "Oh my God, Tara," Mia breathed. "That's identity theft. That's a serious crime." "I know," Tara whispered, tears finally breaking through. "My own family, Mia. My own parents. What are you going to do?" Tara wiped her eyes, a cold resolve settling over her. "First, I'm going to the credit union tomorrow to file a fraud report. Then I think I need a lawyer." That night, as Tara lay awake in her bed staring at the ceiling, her phone buzzed with a text. It was from her mother. "We need to talk. Your father did something foolish, but he meant well. Please call us." Meant well. The words echoed in Tara's mind with bitter irony. How could forging her signature on loan documents possibly be meant well? It was a desperate act by people who saw her not as a daughter, but as a resource to be exploited, even if it meant breaking the law and potentially ruining her financial future. The next morning, she went to the credit union and spent 2 hours with their fraud department filing reports and signing affidavits stating that she had not authorized the loan application. The customer service representative, a kind woman named Denise, guided her through the process with gentle efficiency. "Unfortunately, this happens more often than you might think," Denise told her. "Family members using each other's identities for financial gain. It's especially common when the perpetrator knows all the victim's personal information." Victim. The word landed with a dull thud in Tara's chest. She had never thought of herself that way, but that's exactly what she was, a victim of her family's entitlement and financial abuse. "What happens now?" she asked. "We'll investigate and likely deny the loan application," Denise explained. "But you should consider filing a police report as well to further protect yourself. And you might want to consult with an attorney who specializes in identity theft cases." As Tara left the credit union, she felt numb. Filing a police report would mean potentially seeing her parents arrested, charged with a crime. Could she really do that? But if she didn't, what would stop them from trying again, using her identity for other loans, other credit cards? She spent the weekend researching attorneys, finally finding one who specialized in identity theft cases, particularly those involving family members. Rebecca Chen had over 15 years of experience and a compassionate approach to these difficult situations, according to her website. On Monday morning, Tara called and made an appointment for that afternoon, taking a rare half-day off work. The law office was in a converted Victorian house in downtown Portland, its interior warm and inviting, despite the serious nature of the business conducted there. Rebecca Chen was in her mid-40s, with straight black hair cut in a sharp bob, and kind eyes behind stylish glasses. She listened intently as Tara explained the situation, starting with the years of financial support she had provided, and ending with the discovery of the fraudulent loan application. When Tara finished, Rebecca nodded slowly. "What you're describing isn't just identity theft, Ms. Morgan. It's a pattern of financial exploitation that culminated in fraud when you finally set boundaries. Unfortunately, I see cases like this more often than I'd like." "What should I do?" Tara asked, feeling both relief at being understood and dread at what might come next. "That depends on what outcome you want," Rebecca replied. We can pursue this criminally, which would mean filing a police report and potentially seeing your parents face charges. Or we can handle it civilly, focusing on protecting your financial identity and ensuring you're not held liable for any fraudulent accounts. She paused. It's a deeply personal decision, and there's no right or wrong answer. Tara stared at her hands twisting in her lap. They're my parents, she said softly. Even after everything, I don't know if I can be responsible for them going to jail. I understand, Rebecca said gently. Many of my clients feel the same way. Family ties are strong even when they've been damaged by betrayal. She reached for a notepad. Let's start by focusing on protecting you. We'll file formal disputes with all 3 credit bureaus. We'll send cease and desist letters to your parents, making it clear that any further attempts to use your identity will result in criminal charges. And we'll work with the credit union to ensure this fraudulent application doesn't affect your credit score. As Rebecca outlined the steps they would take, Tara felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. For the first time since discovering the fraud, she could see a path forward that protected her without completely severing the possibility of eventual reconciliation with her family, if they ever truly understood the harm they had done. There's one more thing, Rebecca said as their meeting was wrapping up. I know this is painful, but I want you to document everything. Every call, every text, every interaction with your family regarding money. This creates a record that will be invaluable if things escalate further. Tara nodded, the reality of her situation settling around her like a heavy cloak. She had always thought of family as a source of unconditional love and support. Now she was hiring an attorney to protect herself from the very people who should have been protecting her. As she left Rebecca's office, her phone buzzed with a call from her father. For the first time in weeks, she answered. Tara. William's voice was strained, lacking its usual authoritative tone. The credit union called us. They said the loan application was flagged for fraud. What did you do? What did I do? Tara repeated, incredulous. You forged my signature on a loan application, Dad. You committed identity theft against your own daughter. What did you think would happen? We needed the money, he exploded. The house is about to go into foreclosure. We didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, Tara replied, her voice steady despite the anger surging through her. You could have sold the house and downsized. You could have found jobs, both of you. Vanessa could have supported herself instead of living at home at 28. You chose to commit fraud instead. It's not fraud when it's family, William insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. We would have paid it back. With what money, Dad? You haven't held a steady job in years. Mom doesn't work. Vanessa can't keep a job for more than a few months. Tara took a deep breath. I've hired an attorney. I've filed fraud reports with the credit union. If you try anything like this again, I'll file criminal charges. Do you understand? The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long that Tara thought he might have hung up. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. You would do that to your own parents. You did this to yourselves, Tara replied, her heart breaking even as she stood firm. I love you, Dad. I will always love you. But I won't let you destroy my life to maintain yours. She ended the call and stood on the sidewalk outside Rebecca's office, her phone clutched in her trembling hand. Pedestrians flowed around her, going about their day, unaware of the seismic shift occurring in her life. She felt simultaneously powerful and devastated, free and more alone than she had ever been. That evening, she met Mia and Ben at a quiet wine bar near her apartment. She hadn't planned to invite Ben, but when she ran into him at the office and he noticed her distress, the story had spilled out. To her surprise, his response had been immediate and supportive. My parents did something similar, he told her, his voice low as they stood in the break room. They took out a credit card in my name when I was in college. I didn't find out until collectors started calling me for payments. What did you do? Tara had asked, astonished to find someone else who understood her situation so intimately. I had to file a police report, Ben admitted. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I had to protect myself. He had hesitated, then added, If you want to talk about it more, I'd be happy to join you and Mia tonight. Now sitting in the dimly lit bar, Tara felt a strange sense of community as she shared her meeting with Rebecca and the subsequent call with her father. Mia was outraged on her behalf, her loyalty fierce and unwavering. But it was Ben's quiet understanding that soothed Tara's ragged nerves. "They'll try to make you feel like the villain," he said, swirling the wine in his glass. "My parents did that too. They said I was betraying the family, dishonoring them by standing up for myself. It took me a long time to realize that they were the ones who had betrayed me first." "How did you handle it?" Tara asked. "One day at a time," Ben replied with a small smile. "I set boundaries. I made it clear what behavior I would and wouldn't accept. And eventually they began to respect those boundaries. It wasn't easy, and our relationship is still complicated. But it's healthier now than it ever was before." His words gave Tara hope, a fragile tendril unfurling in the midst of her pain. Maybe someday her family would understand what they had done. Maybe they could build a new relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. But even if that never happened, she was building a new support system. Mia, who had stood by her through years of family drama. Ben, who understood her struggle in a way few others could. Her colleagues at work, who were beginning to see her as the capable, ambitious professional she truly was. Her yoga instructor, who had noticed her progress and encouraged her to try more advanced classes. She was creating a life that belonged to her alone, brick by brick, day by day. A life where she was no one's plan B, no one's safety net, no one's ATM. She was simply Tara, whole and complete in herself, worthy of respect, worthy of boundaries, worthy of love that didn't come with conditions or price tags attached. As she walked home that night, the Portland air crisp with the scent of impending autumn, Tara felt the first stirrings of real peace since this journey began. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be more confrontations, more difficult decisions, more moments of doubt and grief. But for the first time, she was walking that road as herself, free from the chains that had bound her for so long. She paused on the bridge overlooking the Willamette River, watching the city lights reflect on the dark water below. In those shimmering reflections, she saw not just the city, but her own transformation rippling outward from the single moment of courage when she had finally said, "Enough." Autumn descended on Portland, in a symphony of amber and crimson leaves, swirling through city streets like dancers taking their final bow. Tara watched the seasonal transformation from the window of her office, feeling a parallel change within herself. 3 months had passed since she had cut financial ties with her family, 2 months since discovering the fraudulent loan application. The initial shock and raw pain had mellowed into a steady resolve, a quiet confidence in her decision. Working with Rebecca Chen had proven more valuable than Tara could have imagined. Together, they had secured her financial identity, sending formal letters to her parents, warning that any further attempts to use her information would result in criminal charges. The credit union had removed the fraudulent application from her record, and Rebecca had helped her establish additional protections on her credit reports. But the legal work was only part of their collaboration. Rebecca had also become a mentor of sorts, guiding Tara through the emotional complexity of setting boundaries with family. "This isn't just about protecting your money," Rebecca had told her during their third meeting. "It's about reclaiming your power, your right to make choices based on what's best for you, rather than what others demand." Now, as October painted Portland in fiery colors, Tara was experiencing the practical reality of that reclamation. Her bank account, once perpetually drained by family emergencies, was growing steadily. She had created a detailed budget, allocating funds for her MBA courses, her apartment, and even a modest travel fund labeled simply Italy with Mia. The very existence of that fund represented a seismic shift in her thinking, a declaration that her dreams mattered too. At work, the mobile platform project was thriving under her leadership. Jennifer had noticed the change in her, commenting on her increased confidence and innovative thinking during their weekly check-ins. "Whatever's changed in your personal life," Jennifer had said after a particularly successful presentation to the executive team, "it's transformed you professionally as well. You're finally showing us what you're capable of." Her relationship with Ben was evolving too, moving beyond shared lunches and trauma bonding into something deeper. They had begun spending weekends together hiking in Forest Park or exploring Portland's food scene. Ben was patient and understanding, never pushing for more than Tara was ready to give, respecting the emotional journey she was still navigating. One Saturday evening, after they had cooked dinner together in her apartment, Ben stood at her window looking out at the city lights. "My parents called today," he said quietly. "They want me to come to Seattle for Thanksgiving." Tara joined him at the window, their reflections ghostly against the darkness beyond. "Are you going?" Ben turned to face her, his expression thoughtful. "I think so. Our relationship is better now, but it took years to get here. Years of holding firm to my boundaries, of walking away when they crossed lines of proving I was serious." He hesitated. "Have you heard anything from your family lately?" Tara shook her head. After the flurry of desperate messages following the fraud discovery communication had dwindled to near silence. Occasionally, her mother sent brief, superficial texts, carefully avoiding any mention of money or the loan application. Vanessa had gone completely silent, and her father, proud and stubborn to the end, hadn't contacted her at all. "Not really," she admitted. "I think they're still in shock that I actually followed through." Ben nodded understanding in his eyes. It takes time for people to adjust when the dynamics change, especially when they've benefited from the old pattern. He took her hand, his touch warm and steady. "Whatever happens, you're not alone in this." Tara squeezed his hand, grateful for his presence, for the quiet strength he offered without expectation or demand. It was so different from any relationship she had known before, a partnership built on mutual respect rather than obligation or sacrifice. The following week, as Tara was leaving her yoga class, her phone rang. The screen displayed Vanessa's name, the first contact from her sister, in nearly 3 months. Tara hesitated, her thumb hovering over the screen before finally answering. "Hello?" "Tara." Vanessa's voice sounded strange, stripped of its usual bravado. "I need to talk to you. In person, please." Something in her sister's tone made Tara pause. There was none of the entitlement or manipulation she had grown to expect. Instead, Vanessa sounded almost broken, a vulnerability Tara had never heard from her before. "Why?" Tara asked, caution tempering her natural inclination to help. "Things are happening. With the house. With Mom and Dad." Vanessa paused, a shaky breath audible through the phone. "I need to see you. Just once. If you still want nothing to do with us afterward, I'll respect that." Tara closed her eyes, weighing the request. Part of her feared this was just another manipulation tactic, a new approach now that the old ones had failed. But another part, the part that still loved her family despite everything, couldn't simply turn away. "Okay," she finally said. "But not at the house. We can meet at Riverside Cafe tomorrow at noon." A public place, neutral ground where she could leave if things went sideways. "Thank you," Vanessa replied, the relief in her voice palpable. "I'll be there." The next day, Tara arrived at the cafe early, selecting a table near the window where she could watch for Vanessa's arrival. The Riverside location offered a calming view of the water, a counterpoint to the anxiety churning in her stomach. When Vanessa walked in, Tara almost didn't recognize her. Gone was the perfectly styled hair, the carefully applied makeup, the designer clothes that had been her sister's uniform for as long as Tara could remember. This Vanessa wore simple jeans and a plain sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her face bare of makeup and marked with the signs of recent stress. She spotted Tara and walked over, her usual confident stride replaced by something more hesitant. As she slid into the seat across from her sister, Tara noticed something else different. Vanessa was wearing a food service uniform under her open jacket, the logo of a local restaurant chain embroidered on the pocket. "You're working at Green Plate?" Tara asked, unable to hide her surprise. Vanessa nodded, a flush creeping up her neck. "Started 3 weeks ago, waitressing." She looked down at her hands, the manicure grown out and chipped. "Turns out job applications want to see actual experience." Who knew? The attempt at humor fell flat, the silence between them heavy with years of complicated history. Tara waited, determined not to make this easier for her sister. Whatever Vanessa had come to say, she needed to say it without prompting. Finally, Vanessa looked up, her eyes meeting Tara's directly. "The house is being foreclosed on. The bank gave final notice last week. We have to be out by the end of the month." Tara absorbed this information unsurprised, yet still affected by it. That house had been her childhood home, the setting for both happy memories and painful ones. Despite everything, the thought of strangers living there, or worse, the property sitting empty and abandoned, created a hollow feeling in her chest. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said, meaning it despite everything. "But I'm not giving you money, Vanessa. That part of our relationship is over." "I know," Vanessa replied quickly. "That's not why I asked to see you." She took a deep breath, her fingers twisting together on the table. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. For the years of taking from you without giving back. For the way I talked to you that night at dinner. For not stopping Mom and Dad from trying to use your name on that loan." Tara stared at her sister, searching for signs of manipulation or insincerity. But Vanessa's eyes were clear, her expression open in a way Tara had rarely seen. "You knew about the loan?" Tara asked, the betrayal still fresh enough to sting. Vanessa nodded, shame evident in the slump of her shoulders. "Dad said it was the only way to save the house, that you would understand once it was done." She shook her head. "I should have said something. I knew it was wrong, but it was easier to just look away like I always have when it comes to the hard stuff." "Why now?" Tara asked the question, encompassing not just the apology, but Vanessa's apparent transformation from entitled princess to working adult. "Why the job? Why the sudden self-awareness?" "Because you left," Vanessa said simply. "And when you left, everything fell apart. Not just financially, but the whole family dynamic. Suddenly there was no one to blame when things went wrong. No one to fix the problems the rest of us created." She gave a bitter laugh. "Do you know how many job applications I filled out before someone finally hired me? 27. 27 applications for minimum wage jobs because I have no skills, no experience, and an incomplete college degree." "That must have been hard," Tara said, not unsympathetically. "It was humiliating," Vanessa admitted, "but also necessary. For the first time in my life, I'm supporting myself. The pay is terrible, the hours are worse, and my feet kill me every night. But it's my money earned by my work." She straightened slightly, a glimmer of pride showing through the exhaustion on her face. "I'm helping Mom and Dad find an apartment they can afford. Mom got a part-time job at Walgreens. Dad's still struggling, his pride making it hard for him to accept how much has changed." Tara sat back, taking in this new version of her sister, trying to reconcile it with the selfish, entitled Vanessa she had known for 28 years. "I appreciate the apology," she said carefully. "But trust once broken isn't easily rebuilt." "I know," Vanessa replied, meeting her gaze steadily. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, not yet. I haven't earned it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now at least a little what you've been carrying all these years." She hesitated. "And I wanted to know if there's a chance someday that we could try to have a relationship again. A real one built on mutual respect instead of whatever we had before." Tara felt a complicated mixture of emotions, skepticism, hope, lingering, anger, and a cautious openness to the possibility that people could change when circumstances forced them to confront their own behavior. "I need time," she finally said. "This is all very new and there's a lot of hurt to process. But I'm not closing the door completely." Relief washed over Vanessa's face. "That's more than I hoped for," she said softly. Then, reaching into her bag, she pulled out a small envelope. "I almost forgot. The real reason I needed to see you in person." She slid the envelope across the table. Tara opened it, finding a check inside for $420. "It's not much," Vanessa said hurriedly. "Just my first 2 paychecks. But it's a start. I can't pay back everything we took from you, not even close. But I want to try to make amends even if it takes years." Tara stared at the check, rendered speechless by this tangible evidence of her sister's transformation. It wasn't the amount that mattered, but the gesture it represented, the acknowledgement of debt, both financial and emotional. "Keep it," she said, finally sliding the envelope back. "Use it for your new place. This isn't about the money anymore, Vanessa. It's about respect and boundaries." Vanessa nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I should get going. My shift starts in an hour." She stood, adjusting her work jacket. "Thank you for meeting me, for listening." As she turned to leave, Tara called after her. Vanessa? Her sister turned back expectant. I'm proud of you for getting the job, for taking responsibility. It couldn't have been easy. A smile flickered across Vanessa's face, small but genuine. Nothing worth doing ever is right. Then she was gone, walking out into the autumn afternoon with a straighter spine and higher head than when she had entered. Tara remained at the table long after Vanessa had left, watching the river flow past, constant yet ever-changing like life itself. The conversation had shaken her, challenging her perception of her sister as irredeemably selfish and immature. People could change, it seemed, when the scaffolding they had relied on was suddenly removed. That evening, she called Mia and Ben, asking them to meet her for dinner. She needed to process what had happened, to talk through the implications with the people who had supported her through this journey. Over plates of pasta at their favorite Italian restaurant, she recounted the meeting with Vanessa, the revelation about the house foreclosure, the unexpected apology, and the even more unexpected check. "Do you believe her?" Mia asked, always the protective one, wary of Tara being hurt again. Tara considered the question carefully. "I think I do. The changes in her were too fundamental to be faked, and the check was real evidence of a shift in her thinking." Ben nodded, thoughtful. "Sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom for people to change. When my parents finally understood I wasn't backing down, that I would pursue legal action if necessary, they had to confront what they'd done. It changed our relationship completely." "What about your parents?" Mia asked. "Have they shown any signs of similar growth?" "I don't know," Tara admitted. "I haven't heard from my father at all, and my mother only sends superficial messages. According to Vanessa, they're struggling with the new reality in different ways." "Give it time," Ben advised. "This is still fresh. Sometimes people need space to process their own actions, especially when they've been confronted with truths they've been avoiding for years." Later that night, as Ben drove her home, Tara felt a new kind of peace settling over her. The conversation with Vanessa hadn't erased the hurt of the past, but it had opened a small window of possibility for the future. A future where relationships could be rebuilt on healthier foundations. As they pulled up to her apartment building, Ben turned to her, his expression serious. "I want you to know something. Whatever happens with your family, however this evolves, I'm here. Not just as someone who understands what you're going through, but as someone who cares about you deeply." Tara looked at him, this man who had entered her life at exactly the right moment, who had shown her what support without strings attached looked like. She leaned across the console and kissed him, a gentle gesture that held the promise of more to come. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." The next morning, as Tara prepared for work, her phone chimed with a text from her mother. "Vanessa told us you met. The house is being foreclosed. We're moving to an apartment in Beaverton next week. I would like to talk to you if you're willing." Tara stared at the message, feeling the weight of the implicit request. This wasn't about money. It was about beginning the difficult process of addressing the damage that had been done, of determining whether any relationship was salvageable from the wreckage of the past. After careful consideration, she replied, "I need more time, but when I'm ready, we can talk." It was a small opening, neither a rejection nor a full embrace, but rather an acknowledgement that healing, if it was possible at all, would come in its own time and on her terms. The weeks that followed brought significant changes in Tara's professional life. The mobile platform project was completed ahead of schedule, and under budget, earning praise from the executive team, and solidifying her reputation as a rising star within the company. Jennifer called her into her office one afternoon, closing the door for a private conversation. "I've been authorized to offer you a promotion," she said without preamble. "Senior product manager with a 20% salary increase and expanded responsibilities." Tara sat stunned, the opportunity she had always wanted finally within her grasp. In the past, she might have hesitated, knowing that any increase in her income would inevitably be claimed by her family's needs. But now, free from those constraints, she could embrace advancement without reservation. "I accept," she said, a smile spreading across her face. "Thank you for the opportunity." "You've earned it," Jennifer replied. "I always knew you had this potential. I'm glad to see you finally owning it." That evening, Tara celebrated with Ben and Mia, the three of them raising glasses of champagne at an upscale restaurant overlooking the city. To Tara, Mia toasted, who finally learned to put herself first. To new beginnings, Ben added, his eyes warm as they met Tara's over the rim of his glass. To boundaries, Tara finished clinking her glass against theirs. And the freedom they bring. Later that week, as November settled over Portland with misty mornings and early twilights, Tara received an unexpected letter in her mailbox. The envelope bore no return address, but she recognized her father's distinctive handwriting immediately. For a moment, she considered throwing it away unopened, protecting herself from whatever manipulations it might contain. But curiosity won out, and she carefully slit the envelope open. Inside was a single sheet of paper covered in her father's neat engineering precise script. Tara, words have never come easily to me, especially words of apology. But I owe you this much at least. I was wrong. Wrong to take your support for granted all these years. Wrong to expect you to sacrifice your future for our present. Wrong most of all to betray your trust by trying to use your name for a loan without your permission. I raised you to be strong, independent, and principled. When you demonstrated those very qualities by standing up to us, I reacted with anger, instead of the pride I should have felt. A father should want better for his children than he had for himself. Instead, I tried to drag you down to prop up my own failures. We are losing the house. Your mother and I are moving to a small apartment. At 62, I am starting over working as a night security guard at an office building. It is humbling, but perhaps necessary. I don't expect forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. But I want you to know that I recognize my failures both as a provider and as a father. You deserved better. Whatever you decide about our relationship going forward, know that I am proud of the woman you have become, even if that woman had to stand against me to claim her rightful place in the world. Dad. Tara read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words on the final reading. Her father had never been one for emotional declarations or admissions of weakness. This letter represented a seismic shift in his understanding of himself and his relationship with his daughter. She didn't respond immediately, knowing that such a fundamental change in their dynamic required careful consideration. This wasn't about rushing to forgiveness or pretending the hurt hadn't happened. It was about acknowledging that people could change, could grow, could recognize their mistakes, and begin the hard work of atonement. December arrived with twinkling lights adorning Portland's streets and a light dusting of snow that transformed the city into a winter wonderland. Tara, who had always loved the holiday season, despite the financial strain it usually brought, found herself enjoying the festivities with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. Her MBA courses were challenging but fulfilling, expanding her knowledge and connecting her with a network of ambitious professionals. Her relationship with Ben had deepened into something serious, built on mutual respect and shared understanding of the complex dynamics of family obligation. And her promotion had brought not just financial benefits, but a new level of professional satisfaction as she tackled more complex projects with greater autonomy. One crisp Sunday afternoon, as she and Ben walked hand in hand through a snow-dusted park, her phone rang. It was Vanessa. "Mom and Dad are settled in the new apartment," her sister said after they had exchanged greetings. "It's small but clean and close to both their jobs." She hesitated. "They would like to see you if you're ready. Maybe for coffee somewhere neutral, not at their place." Tara stopped walking, snow crunching beneath her boots. Ben squeezed her hand in silent support as she considered the request. "Okay," she said finally, "but just coffee somewhere public. And I'll be bringing Ben with me." "Of course," Vanessa replied, relief evident in her voice. "Whatever makes you comfortable." They arranged to meet at a cafe downtown the following weekend. In the days leading up to it, Tara found herself vacillating between apprehension and cautious hope. She didn't expect a miracle, a sudden transformation of her family into the supportive unit she had always craved. But perhaps they could begin building something new from the ashes of what had been destroyed. The cafe was bustling with holiday shoppers. When Tara and Ben arrived, the aroma of espresso and cinnamon filling the air. Her parents were already there, seated at a corner table looking smaller somehow than she remembered. Her mother wore the navy blue blazer of her Walgreens uniform, clearly having come straight from work. Her father, once imposing in his confidence, now sat with a slight stoop to his shoulders. his hands wrapped around a coffee mug as if seeking warmth. They looked up as Tara approached, anxiety and hope mingling in their expressions. Her mother rose immediately, taking a half step forward, before stopping herself, uncertain of her welcome. "Tara," she said softly, "thank you for coming." Tara nodded, introducing Ben before taking her seat across from them. For a moment no one spoke, the weight of their shared history hanging heavy in the air between them. "Your father and I want you to know how sorry we are," Catherine finally began, her voice trembling slightly. "Not just for the loan, but for everything. For taking advantage of your generosity all these years. For not recognizing the sacrifices you were making." William cleared his throat, his eyes meeting Tara's with difficulty. "I meant what I wrote in my letter," he said gruffly. "I failed you as a father. Instead of protecting you, I exploited you." "We don't expect forgiveness," Catherine added quickly. "We know we've broken your trust in fundamental ways, but we hope perhaps that we could begin to build a new relationship, one where we respect your boundaries and treat you with the dignity you deserve." Tara studied them, these people who had shaped her for better and worse, who had given her life but also burdened it with unreasonable expectations. She saw the genuine remorse in their eyes, the humility that hardship had finally taught them. "I appreciate your apology," she said carefully, "and I'm willing to try to build something new. But it will take time, and there will be firm boundaries. I will never give you money again, not a single dollar. Our relationship has to be based on emotional connection, not financial support." Her parents nodded, accepting the terms without argument. "We understand," William said. "We don't want your money. We want our daughter back on whatever terms she's willing to offer." The conversation that followed was stilted at times, the four of them navigating unfamiliar territory without the old patterns to fall back on. But there were also moments of genuine connection, glimpses of what might be possible with time and continued effort on all sides. As they were preparing to leave, Catherine reached out her hand, hovering near Tara's, but not quite touching. "Would you consider joining us for Christmas dinner?" she asked hesitantly. "Nothing elaborate, just a simple meal at the apartment. Vanessa will be there too." Tara exchanged a glance with Ben, who gave a slight nod, indicating his support whatever she decided. "I'll think about it," she promised, neither accepting nor refusing outright. "I'll let you know." Outside, as they walked back to Ben's car, he slipped an arm around her shoulders. "You did well in there," he said. "How are you feeling?" Tara considered the questions, sorting through the complex emotions the meeting had stirred. Cautiously hopeful, she decided. They seem genuinely changed by what's happened, but I'm still wary. "That's healthy," Ben assured her. "Rebuilding trust takes time. You don't have to decide everything today." Later that week, as Tara stood on the balcony of her apartment, watching snowflakes drift down to blanket the city in pristine white, she felt a sense of peace settling over her. The past year had been transformative, painful in many ways, but ultimately necessary for her growth. She had learned to set boundaries and enforce them even when it hurt. She had discovered her own worth beyond what she could provide for others. She had built a life centered around her own needs and dreams, rather than sacrificing them for people who took her generosity for granted. Her family was changing too, forced by circumstances to confront the consequences of their actions and begin the difficult process of taking responsibility for their own lives. Whether those changes would last, whether they could truly build new relationships based on mutual respect rather than exploitation, remained to be seen. But regardless of the outcome, Tara knew she would be okay. She had her career thriving under her newfound confidence. She had her education progressing steadily toward her MBA. She had friends like Mia, who had stood by her through the darkest times. And she had Ben, whose understanding and support had helped her navigate this difficult journey. As she sipped her wine, watching the city lights twinkle through the falling snow, Tara remembered the watercolor of Mount Hood she had purchased months ago, the one the artist had described as the light breaking over darkness. That was her life now, the dawn after a long night, the clarity that comes when shadows are finally banished. Her phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Just finished my first semester at community college. Business administration, straight A's." Tara smiled, typing back, "I'm proud of you." Then she added after a moment's consideration, "I'll come for Christmas dinner." It wasn't forgiveness, not completely. That would take more time, more evidence of lasting change. But it was an opening, a willingness to see if something new could grow from the scorched earth of the past. Tara returned to the warmth of her apartment where Ben was waiting, preparing a simple dinner in her kitchen. The scene was domestic comfortable, a glimpse of the future they might build together. "I decided to go to Christmas dinner with my family," she told him, setting down her wine glass. "Would you come with me?" Ben smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Of course. Whatever you need." "I don't need it," Tara replied, the distinction important to her. "I'm choosing it. There's a difference." And there was all the difference in the world between giving from obligation and giving from choice, between being someone's backup plan and being the architect of your own life. Tara had learned that lesson the hard way, but now standing in her own space, surrounded by the life she had built for herself, she knew it had been worth every difficult moment. She was no longer plan B, no longer the safety net, no longer the ATM. She was simply Tara, whole and complete in herself, extending a hand to her family, not from duty, but from strength, allowing them the chance to prove they could be worthy of her love without exploiting her generosity. As snow continued to fall outside, transforming Portland into a winter wonderland, Tara felt the final pieces of her new life settling into place. The journey had been painful, the transitions difficult, but standing on the other side, she wouldn't have changed a thing. From the ashes of exploitation had risen a phoenix of self-worth, spreading its wings in a sky limitless with possibility.